The dust rises easily because there's no asphalt to hold it down. Each step lifts particles that seem to dance with the dry wind, while the cracked ground bears the marks of barefoot, forgotten feet. Childhood around there doesn't begin with toys or playgrounds, but with a crushed can kicked by someone who learned to dream with a little, because the plenty never came. The houses have no numbers, no doorbells, no reinforced doors. They are made of mud walls, covered with tarps that once had other lives, like rice sacks or cement bags. The windows are holes covered with claws, and the light that comes in is the same light that reveals the details of scarcity. There, privacy is a luxury, but resilience is the rule. Before the sun rises, there are voices. Low voices mixed with the sounds of basins, empty pots, crackling wood. That's when the day begins, not because someone wants it to, but because it has to. No one waits for an alarm. It doesn't exist. What wakes them is necessity, calling their name even when the body hasn't yet rested. In every corner, there's improvisation, the bent spoon that became a hook, the tire that became a swing, the piece of mirror glued to the wall as repurposed vanity. Nothing there is thrown away without first being tried again. Everything gets a chance to become something else, because what's missing isn't just money, it's options. The noise of water, jugs being carried, echoes as the morning soundtrack. The water, which could come from a faucet, is fetch it in. Long walks, balanced on the head by hands that have already mastered the balance of survival. Every drop is measured as if it were liquid gold, because it is. The children's smiles contrast with the harshness of the walls. They run, play, push each other, not because everything is fine, but because they don't yet know what's wrong. Innocence there is more stubborn than poverty. It insists on existing, even where almost nothing else survives. The school is a borrowed room. The desks are crooked wooden benches, and the books, when they exist, pass from hand to hand. Like shared treasures. The teacher doesn't receive a fixed salary. She teaches because she believes it's still possible to plant light, even in a soil of shadows. There are lines for food, for donations, for medical consultations. But the longest line is the one for hope, the one that never moves, but everyone keeps waiting in, as if one day someone would call each by name and say, "Now it's your turn." Adults no longer ask what the future will bring. They want to know if it will rain today, if someone found gas, if the aid truck passed by. Life is measured by small occurrences, which determine whether there will be beans or just flour. There are religions in every direction. Small churches with loud sound and low ceilings promise miracles in exchange for faith. And there, faith is not negotiated. It's given entirely, as a last refuge for those who have already lost almost everything, except the will to believe. The hospitals are corridors with leaks. The stretchers are improvised doors, and the medicine, when it arrives, feels like a celebration. Mothers hold their children tightly, as if the warmth of their arms could replace what's missing from the shelves. Commerce is a tarp stretched over stacked bricks. Colorful candies, used flip-flops, ropes, halved soap bars are sold. Currency is not just money. It's favor, trust. The tab that gets paid when it can. Hunger is not always declared. It shows in the distant gaze, in the belly that no longer growls because it got used to it, in the plate with more water than substance. It's a discreet, but constant presence, like someone who never leaves. At night, silence is deceiving. It seems like peace, but it's the absence of movement. When darkness arrives, there's nothing to do but wait for morning. Candles replace electricity, and the fear doesn't come only from the dark, but from what can happen inside it. Young people want to leave. They don't know how, but they dream of airports they've never seen, of cities where the streets are clean and the bus comes on time. The television shows all of it, even if it only works for an hour a day with an unstable signal. Many girls become women too early. Childhood ends with the first child, or with abandonment. They grow up caring for someone before understanding who they are. The strength they show doesn't come from choice, but from urgency. There are markets where little is sold and much is talked about. Places where people share confessions, find out who lost someone, who is sick, who needs rice. It's the nervous center of the community, and sometimes the only place where a genuine laugh is heard. Shoes have holes. Toys are fragments, beds creak. But there is a kind of dignity that survives even where everything else seems to fail. A dignity that doesn't depend on appearance, but on posture. The refusal to give up. Politics passes through with cheap promises and flag-covered trucks, then it leaves. The same potholes remain, the same hard smiles, the same pleas for something that never comes. But no one is surprised. They've learned not to count on it. The weather punishes. When it rains, it floods. When it's dry, the ground cracks. And yet, seeds are planted. Planted out of stubbornness, out of faith, out of instinct. Because if planting stops, there's nothing left to do but wait for help that might never come. Sunday clothes are the same as Mondays, just cleaned with more care, pressed with a bottle filled with hot water. The details are few, but meaningful. A ribbon in the hair, a spotless blouse, a less worn shoe. These are signs that vanity still exists where there is struggle. Mothers tell stories they invent on the spot. Stories of kings, of journeys, of glowing cities. They know it's not real, but they tell it as if it were, so their children have more than just the dry scenery of the life around them. Child labor is not the exception, it's the routine. Carrying, cleaning, selling, helping. Childhood is compressed to fit into a world where no one has time to grow slowly. And even so, there are curious eyes, innocent questions, desires too big for the little space available. There are elders with calloused hands, curved backs, and steady eyes. They've seen everything, lost a lot, but still remain, watching life with a kind of wisdom not taught in books. They know when it will rain, who's lying, and when it's best to stay silent. Transportation is done in overcrowded pickup trucks, borrowed bicycles, or on foot. Distances are not measured in kilometers, but in exhaustion. And each journey demands more than physical strength. It demands the will to keep going, even when the body has asked for a pause. Burials are collective, sometimes rushed. Not out of disrespect, but due to lack of structure. Pain has no time to be processed, only swallowed. And even so, there are tears. Tears that need no explanation. On market days, there are more colors, more movement, more smell of food being made. It's when everything seems less difficult, even if just for a few hours. Children get candy. Adults exchange promises. And for a few moments, it almost feels like forgetting is possible. Starry nights offer comfort. The sky seems closer, cleaner, friendlier. And looking up, many say life up there must be different, maybe fairer, maybe with less hunger, maybe with more answers to so many questions that here remain voiceless. There is music, even without instruments. They clap hands, sing together, use cans as drums. The melody is born from the desire not to be silenced, from the refusal to let poverty steal joy too. Because sometimes singing is the only way to resist. When someone manages to leave, they become a legend. They say he went to study, that he has a real house, that he sends pictures. And even if all of it is exaggerated, no one cuts the hope. Because it's that story that keeps the others standing. The story that maybe it's still possible. Faith is not just belief. It's a way to keep going. To wake up, to search, to endure. And even when everything around screams that nothing will ever change, there's a kind of invisible strength supporting every gesture. A kind of courage born from despair, but blooming in persistence. Some wake up earlier than others, not out of discipline, but out of fear that the food will run out before they arrive. There is an unspoken time for essential things. Those who arrive late wait, Those who wait too long return with nothing. And they return with a silence heavier than the empty bag. The mothers who carry their children in their arms don't do it just out of affection, but because the path is too hostile for small feet. They go on with their bodies bent, eyes alert, and breath marked by the constant effort to protect what they hold most precious, even without having almost anything. No one complains about the heat, nor the thirst, nor the discomfort, because complaining is a luxury reserved for those who believe they'll be heard. There, pain is swallowed as part of the day, like the dust that enters the nostrils without asking permission. They've learned to endure without protest, to bear without fanfare. There's a brutal normality in seeing children divide the same dry piece of bread into 4 parts and laugh about it. They play with the limits of scarcity as if it were a game. They smile between bites, maybe to hide the hunger that remained, maybe not to scare the younger ones. Adults speak softly when touching on serious topics. They use codes, signals. They know certain truths, if said out loud, hurt more. And in a world where everything already weighs heavily, sparing words is a way of caring for the other. A hardened kind of affection. Work has no set time to begin, but it has a time to hurt. Hands blister, shoulders burn, spines complain. But no one stops, because stopping means not eating. That's what drives movement, not the clock, but urgency. The body learns to function at its limit without asking for rest. When someone falls ill, the news spreads fast. Not as gossip, but as warning. Every fever is a threat. Every poorly treated wound could become a sentence. And since there aren't many resources, care is communal. People watch, ask, share the little they have. Because survival there is collective. The days are neither long nor short. They simply are. They pass without ceremony, blend into one another, and are only marked by significant events. The loss of someone, the arrival of a distant relative, the distribution of something unexpected. The rest is repetition covered in dust. The music playing from an old radio comes from afar, crossing thin walls, reaching those sitting on the sidewalk. For a few minutes, it transforms the environment. The song doesn't speak about their lives, but it feels as if it does. The melody lends lightness to a place that has forgotten how to be light. Sometimes, a strange car arrives with plates from elsewhere. Everyone looks. Some children approach, expecting something. Adults observe from afar with suspicion. They've been deceived too many times to get excited about visitors. And yet, they wait. Because hope, there, survives any disappointment. Some have lived there for generations. Others came from places even worse. None of them feel completely out of place, because suffering unites. Stories of escape, of loss, of renunciation, all meet in the same dry land. And there, belonging is born from shared abandonment. When it rains, everything changes. The ground becomes mud, the roofs leak water inside. But some celebrate. Water is life. Even when it enters through the cracks and weights the makeshift bed, it is still received as a blessing. Because the next day, it will be used to drink, to plant, to carry on. Celebration days are rare. Sometimes a wedding, sometimes a fulfilled promise. On such occasions, everyone joins. They share clothes, lend pots, gather ingredients. The celebration isn't about luxury, it's about unity. And for a few hours, everything feels different. Even if just on the surface. Children grow up faster. Their eyes age before their time. They don't get to be naive for long. They learn early what pain is, what absence is, what injustice is. But they also learn to love without limits, because they know affection may be the only thing that can't be taken from them. Often, those who have a little more are the ones who share the most, not because they have extra, but because they know how much it hurts to lack. This generosity isn't displayed. It happens in silence. A handful of rice left discreetly, a pair of sandals passed along. A conversation that comforts without judgment. There are men who leave to work and only return weeks later. They go far, searching for something that makes the effort worthwhile. When they return, they bring little. But they bring stories, tired smiles, and sometimes even longing, a rare feeling for those who spend so much time just trying to survive. The street animals are not ignored. They get scraps, affection, names. Because even in misery, there is room for compassion. And this relationship with the little teaches a lot. It teaches that those who have less feel more. And that sometimes it's exactly that which prevents everything from collapsing. Some young people write letters. They talk about life, about dreams, about what they saw on TV. Even without knowing where to send them, they write. It's a way of registering that they exist, of not letting silence erase their own story. Words for them are resistance. Objects carry memories. A cracked pan has served meals for months. A patched dress has already clothed 3 sisters. A wooden toy has been passed from cousin to cousin. Nothing is new, but everything is full of story. And that, as sad as it may seem, is also beauty. There are those who draw in the dirt with sticks. Children who create imaginary maps, houses with gardens, streets with trees. The ground becomes paper, and the dream becomes drawing. These images disappear with the wind, but they live on in the minds of those who created them. The language spoken. There blends old words, forgotten dialects, inherited expressions. Every sentence spoken is a legacy. Every way of speaking reveals a world. And even if the rest of the country ignores it, there, an identity is preserved that resists indifference. The most common fear isn't death. It's being forgotten, going through life without being seen, disappearing without leaving a trace. That's why many write their names on walls, at the back of notebooks, on the largest stones. They want to leave a mark, even if a small one. Nights bring questions no one dares to ask during the day. Why here? Why like this? How much longer? But there are no answers. Only a silent certainty that, even without explanation, tomorrow everyone will try again. Because not trying is to die while still alive. The few mirrors do not reflect vanity. They reflect scars, deep gazes, hair that has seen too much sun. But there is pride in the reflected image. Pride in having endured another day. In having cared for others. In having held things together. When someone manages to study, take a course, learn something new, they become a role model. Children look at them with admiration, as if standing before a superhero. Education, there, is more than a future. It's salvation. It's a way out. It's a door that might not be locked. Sometimes, there's too much silence. And that silence says more than any noise. It says everyone is trying to understand the next step. Or they're waiting. Or just too tired to speak. And in those moments, eyes communicate like mute voices that understand everything without saying anything. There's a point in the day when the smell of food spreads. Even if it's little, even if it's simple, there's care in its preparation. Because feeding someone there is almost a sacred act. It's a gesture of presence. It's proof that, no matter how difficult everything is, love still finds space. Hair is braided with patience. Cloths are washed with strength. Clothes are hung with precision. Each daily gesture carries a hidden value, the attempt to maintain some order in a world where almost everything is chaotic. In those details, resistance lives. Those who are gone leave longing and teachings. Their stories continue to be told in evening conversations, in advice given to the younger ones, in gestures. That became custom. Memory is what holds everything up. Because when there's nothing left, it's memory that guarantees continuity. The clothes that cover the body are not just protection from the cold or the sun. They are a shield against outside gazes, against the silent judgment of those who come from elsewhere and cannot understand how it's possible to live with so little. Each patch is an answer. Each knot tied in the fabric is a silent decision to keep going, even if the world insists on slowing down those who already walk slowly. Thin walls let everything slip through. The cries of children, the sound of someone else's radio, the muffled scream of someone who couldn't find what they were looking for at the bottom of the bag. But no one complains. The invaded space is part of the routine. Privacy there is not measured in square meters, but in respect. Learned the hard way. Some walk barefoot not because they like it, but because they have no other choice. And even so, they step firmly, because they've learned that there is dignity even in a bare step. The cracked sidewalks know every soul, every callus, every trail that leads back to the same point, not from lack of desire, but from absence of options. When the supply truck arrives, the sound of the engine is almost a hymn. People come out from wherever they are. Some run, others just observe with tense eyes. There's no guarantee there will be enough for everyone, but there is faith that somehow there will always be something. The presence of the police is ambiguous. Some feel relief, others feel fear. They've already seen broken promises, abuses hidden, protection denied. The authority that should ensure safety often passes by too quickly to notice what really matters. Faces are marked not just by time, but by renunciations. Each wrinkle tells of a divided meal, a sleepless night, a difficult choice. And even without words, there's a fatigue that shows in the eyes. But there is also a strange strength, almost stubborn, that refuses to disappear. When the food runs out earlier than expected, there is a silence that seems to scrape against the walls. No one blames anyone. They just look at each other, searching for what to do. Someone suggests dividing the last bit. Another offers hot tea. It's this kind of response that keeps the community alive. Laughter exists, not because life is funny, but because breathing between one pain and another is necessary. Laughter there is a tactic, a way not to sink. And it shows up at the most unexpected moments, in a silly comment, in a slight stumble, in an old memory. Told with intentional exaggeration. When it rains during the night, many wake up to watch the leaks. They move buckets, adjust tiles, gather mattresses. It's a known ritual, repeated without ceremony. And when the day breaks, the wet clothes are hung like flags of resistance drying under the force of the sun. Some write short sentences on the walls, almost like silent screams. Requests, protests, declarations. The content doesn't matter. What matters is to leave something there, registered. As if ink were the only way to echo a life that, in the eyes of many, is invisible. Elderly know the rhythm of changes that never arrive. They've seen cycles repeat. They've heard promises that were never kept. And that's why they speak little. But when they speak, everyone listens. Because their words don't come from theory, they come from survival. Baby clothes are passed along like blessings. From one lap to another, they go on protecting generations. They are small pieces of fabric that carry stories too large. Each button, each stain, each fold carries the memory of someone who was also born surrounded by absence, but wrapped in love. When the light goes out and night falls earlier, the darkness transforms everything. Children's imagination runs wild. Adults sit close to one another. Stories are told in half-voice, with pauses heavy with meaning. It is in the dark that fears take shape, and dreams too. Some try to sell homemade sweets, crafts, reused bottles filled with soap mix. They walk kilometers to earn a few cents. But they return with something more than money. They return with the feeling that, for a day, they tried to change something. Even if no one noticed, the relationship with time there is different. No one chases the clock. They chase the gas before it runs out, the firewood before it gets dark, the appointment before it closes. Time is measured by utility, not by hands on a watch. And even so, it runs short. Always runs short. Some make toys out of scraps, wire helicopters, dolls from bottle caps, soapbox cars. And the children value each one as if they had been bought from a fancy store. Because they know that the value isn't in the object's origin, but in the love of whoever made it. When a woman receives a lipstick, she keeps it like a talisman. She uses it carefully on specific days. It's not empty vanity, it's an affirmation of identity. It's saying that, even surrounded by lack, she is still herself, and deserves color on her lips. Waiting is constant. For water, for help, for a letter that might come, for a visit that might happen. Life there is, made of weights that teach patience and at the same time corrode from the inside. Waiting sometimes hurts more than losing. Hugs carry weight. They are not formal gestures. They are support. When someone bends under pain, another holds them up. When someone falls, another lifts them. That's how they go on. There's no time for speeches, only for gestures that sustain the real world. Fear is not the same every day. Sometimes it's of the rain, sometimes it's of the drought, sometimes it's of not being able to buy what's missing. But every day, it is there. Like an unwanted visitor who never leaves, just changes clothes. Creativity is the most valuable asset. Those who can't buy, invent. Those who can't go, improvise. Those who can't speak, draw. And this daily inventiveness transforms trash into art, pain into song, absence into narrative. It's the most silent and effective weapon of those who live on the margins. When a child gets sick, the whole house falls ill. No one rests. Everyone searches for something: tea, ointment, prayer. And the sound of the fever isn't just physical, it's moral. Because no one should have to fight so hard just to see a child get better. The parties are simple. A small cake, a cup of juice shared, a crooked candle. But there is singing, dancing, a photo taken with an old cell phone. These are moments that don't last long, but remain etched as if they were entire days. Because there, the little is also everything. Some still believe that one day they'll leave that place. They don't know how or when, but they feed that dream as if it were bread, because it's what keeps the body moving, even when the soul falters. A desire that, even if unreal, is more real than reality itself. The dirt ground becomes a stage for goodbyes. People who leave in silence. Someone who was taken away in a rush. An animal that never returned. Everything there is noticed. Everything there is felt. And even if little is said, absence screams in the chest of those who stay, the first time. Someone sees the sea, coming from there. It feels like witnessing a miracle. The immensity of the water, the sound of the waves, the salty air, everything seems from another planet. And those who return try to describe it with words that don't exist. Because how do you explain the infinite to someone who lives surrounded by limits? Hunger has variations. Sometimes it's for food, sometimes it's for affection, sometimes it's to be heard. And each one hurts in a different place. But all of them have the same root, the feeling that something essential is missing, and no one outside seems to notice. Some women embroider at night. Colored threads on white cloths. They don't sell, they don't exhibit, they just embroider. It's the way they've found to stitch silence. Each stitch is a thought, each design, a longing. And when they finish, they keep it as if storing. A prayer. Dignity doesn't come from clothing, from the house, or from the salary. It comes from the way they look you in the eye, from how they listen, from the firmness with which they say, "It will pass," even when they don't know if it will. It's that firmness that keeps the world spinning, even where it should have already stopped. The promises that come from outside don't touch the ground of reality. They arrive wrapped in pretty words, polished speeches, and smiles that have never set foot on that land. They promise schools, hospitals, change. But everything stays the same. And those who live there have already learned not to take offense. They just don't believe anymore. Childhood ends before it begins. But affection tries to rescue what can still be saved. A tight hug, a gentle hand through the hair, a made-up story with a happy ending. All of it is resistance. Desperate attempts to keep a light burning before the darkness takes over completely. When someone disappears from the routine, the neighbors notice the spot that used to be occupied is now empty. And the absence, however small it seems, reverberates like a warning sign. Someone knocks on the door, asks, not out of curiosity, but because their one life affects all the others. Clothes on the line are almost flags of identity. They tell who lives there, who takes care, who washes carefully, who folds in a rush. They are pieces of stories stretched out in the sun, trying to dry more than just the fabric, trying to dry the anguish that insists on lingering in the air. There's someone who still reads books, few, old, torn, but they read. And when finished, they tell others. They retell with detail, with emotion, with the care of someone who knows they are offering not just a story, but an escape. And for a few minutes, everyone travels far without leaving the ground. The long walks are not choices. They are obligations. To fetch something, to sell something, to deliver something. And even when the sun punishes or the feet protest, they go on. Because the alternative would be to stay, and those who stay too long there risk disappearing inside their own waiting. The fear of losing a loved one doesn't come with funeral plans or insurance. It's carried in the chest daily. It's known that a poorly treated flu, an ignored pain, an infected cut is enough. And the idea that something so small could take someone away is what hurts the most. Communication doesn't always depend on cell phones or internet. Often, it's done through a look, a gesture, a quick touch on the shoulder. They are silent codes that say everything. Because when technology fails, and it always fails there, human connection is what keeps the message alive. Time feels doubled. Days carry the weight of weeks. Weeks feel like years. And even so, no one allows themselves to stop. Because stopping is accepting. And there, no one fully accepts. Indignation lives alongside patience. They sleep on the same mat. One dreams, the other keeps watch. The shoes forgotten in the corner of the house tell the journey of someone who returned too tired to put them away. They are dirty, worn out, crooked. But there, in that position, they seem to say, I went, I tried, I came back. And that alone is enough. The smell of homemade soap mixes with the scent of wet earth. It's a smell of effort, of trying, of literal and symbolic cleansing. Because even though the world outside is dirty and cruel, the inside of the home is treated with dignity as if it were a temple. Candles, when lit, don't just illuminate. They warm, welcome, invite conversation. Each flickering flame is a reminder that there is still fire inside, even when everything around seems far too cold. And that is enough to keep the soul breathing. There are those who dream of simple things. A stove that works properly, a bed that doesn't sink, a pair of sneakers that last the whole year. And those dreams, no matter how small they seem to outsiders, are immense in the context of where they are born. They are desires built with surgical precision. Some have old portraits hanging on the wall. Faded photos from times that were already hard, but today seem nostalgic. It's not romantic nostalgia. It's the memory of what survived. Because in many cases, surviving was already more than what was expected. The emotional weight of mothers is invisible. They carry everything: absence, hunger, uncertainty. And still, they smile. Not always because they want to, but because they must. Because if they collapse, everything collapses with them. And so, they hold themselves up with a strength no one sees, but everyone feels. When the radio announces something new, everyone listens. It doesn't matter if the news is good or bad, it's different. And different is already reason enough to stop. Because living surrounded by repetition makes any variation a hope for disruption. Even if the novelty lasts just a few seconds, there are looks that say more than advice. That say, I understand. That say, I've been through this. That say, you're not alone. And in those moments, what saves is not what is said, but what is felt. The silent connection between two pains recognizing each other. Cold nights are the hardest. Not just because of the temperature, but because the cold amplifies what's missing. The lack of warm food, of enough blankets, of human presence. And on those nights, the loneliness feels greater, as if every wall pushed away instead of protected. The children who learn to do math on the ground, with pieces of charcoal, aren't just studying. They are telling the world that they still believe, that they still insist, that there is still some chance. And that kind of hope can't be measured in report cards, only in respectful silence. Some carry old letters in their pockets. Notes that were never answered, yellowed documents, pieces of paper that have become emotional anchors. Not for their content, but for what they represent. A bond, a memory, a story that was not forgotten. The walls hear everything. And even without speaking, they hold it all. They hold in stifled screams, muffled conversations, undone plans. And for that, each house there has a soul. A soul made of experience, of resistance, of a kind of pain that learned how to settle without giving up. Days of prolonged rain bring new problems. The ground gives in, food runs low, the smell changes. And even so, there are those who leave their house to check if the neighbor is okay. Because no matter how much everything seems to fall apart, care still holds up what's left. There is deep respect for those who have endured too much. For those who buried their children, who lost everything and still offered help to someone else. These people don't ask for recognition, but they carry a different aura. A silence that demands reverence. Some build small gardens with what remains. Improvised pots, soil brought from far away, donated seeds. And there, flowers bloom, even among the rubble. Because even at the end of the world, there are those who still want beauty, and insist on creating it with their own hands. The distant sound of the rooster marks more than the start of the day. It marks continuity. It marks a new cycle beginning again, even without promises. And each new crow, no matter how familiar it sounds, is a declaration that there is still life where no one expected it anymore. When an old radio plays an old song, some cry in silence. They remember times that may not have been better, but were different. And that kind of memory, even painful, is a shelter. A place inside the mind where time hasn't destroyed everything. The absence of answers no longer surprises. What surprises is the fact that questions still remain. Because to ask, even without reply, is a sign of life. It's a sign that something is still hoped for. And that something is what moves each gesture, each attempt, each difficult breath. The dust covering the furniture is not a sign of neglect. It's proof that there are more urgent things than cleaning. And even so, when time allows, someone wipes it away with care. Because where there is care, there is still love. Even if everything around screams the opposite. There are those who dream of words, of learning to write their own name, of reading a full sentence, of signing a document without needing help. And that dream, no matter how simple, is grand. Because it is an attempt to leave a mark in a world that insists on erasing everything. The cloths covering holes in the walls are colorful. They have vivid patterns, flowers, stripes, drawings. It's as if, in the middle of bare concrete and rotting wood, there was still room for color, for beauty, for saying, someone lives here too. When a child learns to say good morning, even without receiving a reply, it's not politeness, it's resistance. It's a way of insisting that the world can be better than it has been. And every kind word that comes from a small mouth there is a seed thrown onto the driest soil, but still, a seed. Some say goodbye with a timid wave. There are no long hugs, no declarations. The farewell is contained, as if the fear of feeling too much could weaken what strength remains. And even so, in that short gesture, there is everything: love, gratitude, longing, and promise. The days go on, even when no one wants them to. And in that forced continuity lives courage. Not the heroic kind seen in movies, but the silent one. The one that gets up, sweeps, cooks, smiles with the mouth and cries with the eyes without anyone noticing. Dusk paints the sky in shades of red and orange, as if saying, even here, there's still beauty. And those who lift their eyes to witness this free spectacle know it. They don't comment, don't record, don't post. They just look and feel. There is a boy who draws his own face on the dirt ground. Not the face he has, but the one he imagines he could have had if life had been different. With big eyes, a full smile, and combed hair. Then he erases it all with his feet. But for a moment, he existed. Some keep dreams in closed tins, hidden on the top shelf. Little letters to a future that may never come. Plans written in notebook pages with uncertain handwriting. They are memories from a time that hasn't happened yet, but still insist on being preserved. The kitchen, however simple it may be, is still a sanctuary. It's where food turns into affection, where even an empty table symbolizes union. It's there that decisions are made, tears are dried with a dish towel, and laughter, when it happens, echoes louder. The smell of wet earth invades homes with tin roofs and for a few seconds brings calm. It's a smell that asks for nothing. It simply arrives, fills the space, and brings memories that no one can explain. It's as if the world is saying, I'm still here. When someone sings while doing laundry, it's not because everything is fine. It's because they've learned to sing even when everything is wrong. The trembling voice, feet in cold water, soap running down the arms, all of it becomes a ritual of continuity. Generosity, there's not photographed. It happens. In silence. In the shared plate, in the offered help, in the unexpected visit. These are gestures that don't seek an audience or recognition. They are made by those who understand that true love is invisible. Some no longer know how to dream big. They dream small because it's safer. A new light bulb. A chair without loose nails. A working fan. And those small dreams, once realized, feel as big as the world to those who live where nothing comes easily. The marks on their bodies don't just come from labor. They come from waiting, from frustration, from repetition. And even so, there is no bent body that doesn't carry an upright head. Because if there's anything that still remains, it's the dignity no one could take away. Faith is not an answer. It's a path. It's what keeps feet moving when there is no map, no signs. Every whispered prayer, every candle lit, every gesture of surrender is a request without guarantees, but with total commitment. The wind that slips through the cracks of the improvised windows doesn't cool, it reveals. It shows how much is missing, how much is endured, how much is still attempted. Because every breeze that passes through the house is a reminder that the world outside keeps turning, even without warning. The arrival of a letter changes everything. Even if it's just an ad, even if it's from someone far away. Because having your name written there, recognized by someone, is proof of existence. And in places where everything feels invisible, that is a gift. The girls who braid each other's hair learn more than style. They learn care. They learn to listen. They learn to see themselves as allies in a world that has so often tried to separate them. And in those braids, they tie invisible bonds that will last longer than childhood itself. The sound of a spoon tapping a pot is an announcement that there will still be food, even if just a little, even if just thin soup. A sound that soothes, that brings order, that says, we'll make it. And within that echo of aluminum lives a kind of hope that only those who have gone hungry understand. When someone cries in secret, it's not shame. It's respect for those around them. They cry in hiding, not to disturb, not to burden. And that is, perhaps, the greatest proof of love one can offer when there's nothing left. The days when there is a new object in the house, a bucket, a cup, a cloth, are special days. They are conquests. They are signs that, despite everything, something has changed. And even if the world ignores it, someone inside feels victorious. The dirt road holds the marks of everyone. Of those who arrived, those who left, those who stayed. And walking along it, many recognize old footprints and think, he's still here. Because there are presences that continue even in physical absence. The hands that hold other hands there carry more than warmth. They carry promises, comfort, memory, and strength. And even without words they say, I'm trying to. And that, in that setting, is more than enough. There are those who, before sleeping, look at the ceiling and think of everything they didn't say during the day. Not because they didn't want to, but because there was no space. And in that moment, the silence becomes confession, and the darkness, a confidant. The sound of children playing is the most beautiful. Not because it ignores reality, but because it insists on existing within it. It's a sound of stubbornness, of joy without reason, of improvised freedom among ruins. When night falls and everything goes quiet, thoughts run free. They visit places that don't exist, speak with people who are gone, create futures that may never come. And even so, those thoughts are shelter. Pillows on a hard floor. The cloths that cover holes in the ceiling don't hide poverty, they reveal care. They show that even in scarcity, there is tenderness, there is effort. There is the will to protect whoever sleeps beneath them. And that gesture, however simple, is grand. The mothers who still manage to say, it's going to be okay to their children, even without knowing how, are silent heroines. They carry the world on their backs without medals, without applause, without an audience, only with love. The kind of love that gives itself completely, even when in pieces. There are those who look at their reflection in a water bucket and don't recognize themselves. Because time passed too fast, because pain changed their features. But there, in that distorted reflection, there's still someone trying to remember who they were, and who they could have been. The last loaf of bread in the cupboard is divided into 4. No dispute, no calculation, it's instinct. Because there, where so much is missing, they've learned that the only way to go on is together. Not out of romanticism, out of necessity. And when someone asks, what is life like here? Number 1 answers with rehearsed phrases. They just show. The eyes, the body, the space. Because there are places where life cannot be explained, only felt. And where every heartbeat is proof that, even invisible, it still pulses. And maybe that's why those who read, see, or hear this story feel something strange in their chest. Because no matter how far it seems, the truth echoes everywhere. Pain changes clothes, but the feeling is the same. And the one who watches may remember to be grateful. If you've made it this far, it wasn't by chance. Something inside you resists too. Also searches for meaning. Also carries marks that don't appear on the skin. And if this story touched you, share it. Not because it's beautiful, but because it's real. And the real needs to be seen. Subscribe to this channel if you believe every life deserves to be told. Because here, each story is a mirror. And maybe, between the cracks of someone else's pain, you'll see your own light.